everybody. So I just wanted to start basically talking about our Hydrops journey and Zara's story. So obviously I spoke in my previous video about before Zara and before I'd even heard of Hydrops, with, you know, Sophia and being healthy and having a healthy baby. So I just wanted to start just saying about, you know, my pregnancy journey with Zara. So I went to my first scan at 12 weeks when I was pregnant with Zara. Everything was absolutely fine. Like, there was no issues. Everything was fine. So you're like, okay, that's good. You know, everything's great. Then went to the second scan at 16 weeks, and everything wasn't obviously fine. So I don't know if you can hear Zara in the background. She's just playing, bless her. So yeah, went to the second scan, and the lady kept looking. She was looking for quite a long time, and I was getting worried. You know, when you get anxious, to have a feeling. I was like, it's not okay. Everything's not okay. I know it's not okay. And anyway, it was actually my husband that, because she was going on Zara's lungs, and it was actually my husband that was like, oh yeah, like, so what are we looking at then? And she was like, oh, so this is Zara's lungs. And he was like, oh yeah, I can see them. They're really black. And the sonographer was like, yeah, they're not meant to be. And like, literally, my heart just dropped. I was like, what do you mean they're not meant to be? What's going on? What's wrong? And obviously they won't tell you anything to start with. So she went out and got like a lead sonographer to come in and have a look, and they were just muttering to themselves. And then the junior one went out and left us with the lead sonographer, who basically said, yeah, your baby's lungs are black, which means they're filled with fluid. They're not meant to be like that. We can't tell you anything else. You need to go down to the midwife department and talk to somebody there. And that was it. So she went out the room, and I just burst into tears. I couldn't, I didn't know what to do. Obviously, that's not what you want to hear when you go for your baby's scan. And I just burst into tears, and I don't even know. I just wanted to just, you know, I didn't even know what I was thinking. I just wanted to know what was going on. So I got ready quite quickly, you know, wiped the gel and stuff off, got ready quite quickly, and we went straight down to, because obviously we're at the hospital, so we went straight down to the maternity unit. And we were waiting for a little while to speak to somebody, and then a midwife called us into a room and basically said, okay, so you've just had your second scan. The sonographer's picked something up. And we were like, yeah, so they said it's fluid in the lungs. What does that mean? What's going on? What exactly is all that about? And she basically gave us a leaflet and said, like, literally this really small leaflet with nothing on whatsoever, and basically said to us, so your baby's got something called Hydrops. It's fluid in the lungs. I don't know anything about it. You need to be transferred to a specialist unit now, who will see you and scan you and talk to you about everything. But as far as I'm aware, you know, it's not really a great prognosis when you have when you've been diagnosed with Hydrops. So yeah, obviously I felt absolutely awful. I felt absolutely rubbish. I was worried sick. I couldn't stop crying in the car on the way home. I had to go to work, pick my car up. I saw one of my managers, and he was like, you know, how did the scan go? I just burst into tears. I couldn't even like speak. Luckily, he told me not to come into work the next day, you know, so I could just have a day to process things. But, you know, I got home. It was really horrible, because obviously I saw my other Sophia, my other daughter, and she was saying, oh, mummy, you know, did you see the baby? And I had a picture. We have the scan photo, which I'll show you in a minute. And you know what? I never looked at it. I didn't want to look at it because I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know what was going to happen. And, you know, it was just absolutely horrific. It was just horrible. And, you know, they said not to Google. Well, I'm sorry, but obviously you're going to Google. Of course you Google. You know, you want to know exactly what's going on, because they didn't give me any information whatsoever. So as soon as Sophia was in bed, I was obviously there searching on the internet, Hydrops, what is Hydrops, blah, 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 blah. There's not loads, but come across quite a lot of medical journals, which I started reading, which kind of wished I hadn't started reading, because, yeah, most of them don't really have a great outcome at the end of it. So I do understand why they said, you know, not to do that. But, you know, you need something. You need to understand what's going on. So yeah, and on that note, actually, let me just show you the scan pictures just so you can see what we were looking at. Now, these are the scan pictures of Zara from 16 weeks. This is actually one of the first times I've actually looked at them properly, because when I was pregnant with her and after having her, I couldn't look at them. I didn't want, and this sounds really horrible, but I didn't want to bond with her at that point in time, when everybody was telling me, well, you know, when people were telling me, well, yeah, all the doctors and consultants and midwives, as I'll go on to next, were telling me that she's not going to make it. And we had that she's not going to make it all the way from her 16-week scan all the way up to 2.5 months old. We continuously got told she will not make it. Well, she's 3 next month, so she has made it. And I'll show you the scan photos now. I will put them on as well, like, so you can see them a little bit better. Sorry, Zara's just standing below me. So this is her scan photo at 16 weeks. And I don't know if you can really see, but I'll actually put a photo on. So here, on the back of her head and on her neck, sorry Zara, you're putting me off. So on the back of her head and on her neck, and then you can see in her nose, she had edema. And then here, I'll show you actually better on this one. You can see, just trying to think where, I don't know if you can see, but she obviously had fluid all in her lungs, like pleural effusions all around, all in her lungs. And all of this is, well, it's fluid and it's like excess skin as well that she had. So yeah, like I literally came home with them and they got put straight in a drawer. I couldn't look at them. I couldn't show them to Sophia. I just couldn't. So anyway, what happened was I was looking online a lot, couldn't find anything other than medical journals, which basically, you know, do say that more than like, or to put it bluntly, they basically do say if you're pregnant with a baby with Hydrops, that baby will not make it. So I stopped looking at all them and just was waiting for a phone call. So basically I had to wait for the day after to have a phone call from one of the midwives to tell me when my appointment at the specialists would be. So my appointment at the specialist, so this was on the Wednesday, my appointment was going to be on the Friday. So I really was just hoping it'd be like that day or the next day, but luckily we didn't have to wait too long. So luckily my husband was able to get the time off work, so we was able to travel to the appointment together. So we were transferred to a specialist unit in a specialist hospital that was about 1.5 hours away from us. And we went up to, you know, where we was meant to go, and we saw a specialist doctor consultant who was amazing, but you know, they did make it very clear that this doesn't have a high prognosis, and you know, they were just talking about all the different options. So what they were saying is, generally, usually with a baby with Hydrops, it usually means they've got something else. So something else usually would be something like Down syndrome or another genetic condition. So you know, usually they would have something like Down syndrome or have another genetic condition. So what they wanted to do was I can't think of the name of it. I can't think of the proper medical terminology for it. Oh, it's completely gone. So you know when you have like, no, I was just trying to think of it then and I can't think what it's called. have the, the great big needle in your stomach, and they take some fluid from it to check for basically genetic conditions. So, but obviously that's a major risk on its own. That can cause miscarriage and things on its own. So it was a very hard decision to actually make, to actually have that done. But we did end up having it done. That wasn't nice. That was absolutely awful. That was a horrible experience. And, obviously as well, it's hard because you're going through it, because it's a horrible experience having it done. It's quite uncomfortable. But at the same time, you could be causing pain, like a miscarriage, and it's just horrible, isn't it? If you've had one of them done, it's absolutely awful. But anyway, our test results came back and it showed that Zara did not have. So basically we had to wait a few days, but the doctor was more than convinced that she had something like Down syndrome or Turner syndrome or Noonan syndrome. That is the 3 top things. They were pretty 100% sure on what she would have. So they basically did that, sent us away to wait for the test results, and that's all we could do. So the test result, it was a very slow and painful week, or it seemed to be like forever waiting for those test results. But the test results came back, and Zara did not have Down syndrome, and she did not have Turner syndrome. They couldn't test for Noonan's until she was actually, the test for Noonan's, it was either they couldn't test for it until she was actually born, or it didn't come back with a specific result or something. But I know the Down syndrome and the Turners definitely came back saying no, she did not have any of them. So I was called back in, so we were called back in for the results. We didn't get them on the phone. So he said that she doesn't have Turner, she doesn't have Down syndrome or any other genetic condition that was picked up. So what they then offered was a shunt procedure. So this is, like it just says, it's obviously I'm there, I'm awake, you have just a local anaesthetic on your stomach, which doesn't last very long, sometimes for the whole operation. And he would basically put this great big long needle through my stomach, and somehow, by some amazement, because I'm still amazed how they can do it with how small her lungs must have been, how small she must have been. So they basically go through and pop a hole where the fluid is on the outside of her lungs and drain that fluid, and then keep that shunt in there, so in me, obviously not sticking out, in my stomach, so that the fluid is draining into my amniotic fluid instead of gathering around her lungs. So I remember I went, I had to actually go with my my stepmum, because my husband wasn't able to take the time off work, so that was even worse. Not going with my stepmum, but just the fact that my husband wasn't even able to have the time off work, wasn't ideal. So and I was absolutely terrified, because again, the procedure itself has loads of risks. It has major risks, because we'd already had the amniotesis, that's what it's called, done, and then we were having this done, and keep breaking into that. You're not meant to do that. That can cause a lot of miscarriage risk on its own. So what happened was, I went there, I had a blood test done, and I had went into the room, had the local anaesthetic. There was quite a few doctors, nurses, consultants. They also had some junior doctors that wanted to watch the procedure, because it was such a rare procedure that was hardly ever done. And I said, that's fine, because again, the more people who know about things like this, the better, and the more babies we can save. So yeah, he did the local anaesthetic. And I was able to watch, so they did the camera, and I was able to actually watch it on the screen, because I could either choose to watch or not watch, but I wanted to watch. And honestly, it was amazing what he did. Don't get me wrong, I was sat there quite uncomfortable, and I was shaking, and I was sweating, and it was horrible. But at the same time, watching what he was doing on this screen, he was amazing, So I remember he put the shunt in, and literally all this clear fluid came spurting out all over him, all over his trousers, because that's how much there was gathering around her lungs. And it took quite a long time to actually get the first one in place. So he got the first one in place, and by the time he'd done that, my local anaesthetic wore off, and they actually said that, you know, we're taking too long. We don't have time to do the second shunt at the moment. So they did one, sewed me up, and, you know, obviously everybody was just hoping and praying that I don't have a miscarriage, and that it does the job of keeping the fluid out. So I had to go for weekly scans at this hospital, which was an hour and a half away, to just check on the shunts, check on everything, check on how I was healing, just check everything. So I'd had the first shunt. We had a few scans in between just to see how everything was going, and it was keeping the fluid from, you know, gathering around her lungs, which is actually called chlorothorax. That's actually what, congenital chlorothorax, that's actually what that condition is called. And then after a few weeks, when we knew everything was all right and they didn't want to do it too close together, I had the other shunt procedure. So again, they did exactly the same, and they put it on the other side, the other lung. So she had two shunts, so one on each side, to just you know, get rid of as much fluid as possible to give her the best chance of survival. And then I had a few scans in between again, and then on one of the scans, she'd actually pulled one of the shunts out, and they were debating, you know, do we, don't we, don't we go in again? Because obviously, again, you're putting a big risk factor on again. But we did actually go in one more time and take that shunt out and put another shunt in. I also had to have a steroid injection, well, a few steroids injections at that time, because obviously, you know, that was like the fourth time, because obviously with the amniotesis as well, the fourth time breaking the seal. So, you know, going through the amniotic fluid. So I also had to have some steroids injections just in case, you know, that my waters did break and we did go into early labour. But luckily we didn't at that point. So that was, you know, really, really good. So I just continued to have weekly scans at the specialist hospital. So they were just checking, you know, for fluid, for like pleural effusions, for the edema, for growing, just for, you know, for everything, and just check the shunts were still in and all that. And slowly, over a good few weeks that I'd had this done, the fluid around her lungs started to, you know, not reaccumulate, because obviously it was coming out in my amniotic fluid, and the fluid on the top of her head and her nose and things that she had started to reduce. So that was amazing. And the extra skin and things that she had at the back of her neck seemed to kind of resolve itself and sort itself out. So that was absolutely amazing. And she was growing slightly. She obviously was growing, but she wasn't growing a lot. But she was starting to grow. So that was amazing as well. However, you know, they still made it perfectly clear that she still, even with the shunt procedures, she still doesn't have great chances of surviving. I actually went to another hospital, my local hospital, on one scan occasion, just because they were trying, so we didn't have to keep going an hour and a half every week. So I actually had one scan at my local hospital a few weeks before I gave birth to her. And that consultant actually said to me, okay, I've scanned your baby, I can see the shunts, they're still there, you know, just to let you know, you obviously decided to go through with this because of how far along you are, but, you know, your baby either will be severely disabled or not live. Sorry, I don't want to get upset, but literally just said it to me like that. And, you know, I was so frustrated, because I was like, you're not even the specialists who have been looking after us, you know, you are just somebody who's been asked to kind of fill in, and, you know, just to be so horrible, in my opinion, and so blunt. You know, my mum was actually with me, and she was really frustrated as well, and upset, and I was, and I couldn't even say anything because I was just too shocked, and like, you know, from what he'd said. And it's not that I was shocked because, you know, I knew that there was a high chance that she wouldn't make it, but, you know, to just say it that bluntly from somebody who doesn't even have loads of experience with it, it just, yeah, it just upset me at that, you know, like it would most people. And oh, Zara, and yes, so I was going to my scan. Then I said to them that I actually want to stick to the specialist hospital and not go to my local hospital anymore. And luckily, they was able to do that. So I continued going to the specialist hospital and seeing a variety of consultants that are just scanning us every week, and just you know, checking the shunts are in, checking the fluid head growth, and just checking a brain development. You know, everything that they need to do. And they were truly amazing. But nobody spoke about what was going to happen at the birth. Nobody spoke about what was going to happen after that. So I actually started saying to them when I was about 30 weeks, saying, you know, what like, kind of, do I make a birth plan? Like, what happens? What's going to happen? I didn't even have a clue. And they basically said that I would need to have Zara at the specialist hospital. I would have to give birth to her at the specialist hospital, not sorry, she does get tangled up with her oxygen wires, not the local hospital, you know. And if I did have to have her, if it went into labour unexpectedly and it was they couldn't get me to the specialist hospital because it'd be an hour and a half away, then what would happen is I'd basically be transferred by ambulance if I could, you know, kind of hold on, or whether if she was born, she'd be transferred straight away and they would get her to the specialist hospital as soon as possible, basically. So sorry, Zara's just completely put me off, bless her, with what I was saying. So I keep going to the specialist hospital, having the scans, checking everything. We're going to the birthing plan, and they wouldn't do a birthing plan. They said, you know, we won't do that yet, you know, we'll do it closer to the time, but you just need to know that you need to have her here, or if you do need, if it's really quick, kind of like happens, you know, sometimes labour can happen, especially with all them interventions, then as soon as you get to that hospital, you need to get to this hospital via ambulance, or get her transferred straight over. That was all we really said. And on that scan, actually, they wanted the cardiology team to see us and see what was going on, if anything was going on with her heart or anything like that. So we went over and saw the cardiology team. We did actually see the cardiology team on the first meeting with these specialist doctors, and they couldn't find anything. But they wanted us to re-see the cardiology team just to see if anything was happening. And actually, something that the first cardiologist didn't pick up on, she actually, I think it was like a junior, and then when we actually saw the senior one, they were a little bit frustrated that the first person hadn't picked up on it. But she actually had something called pulmonary stenosis. So it's something to do with her valve wasn't working correctly. So there was also that as well to keep a very close eye on. So we were seeing the specialists with regard who did, like, you know, like the shunt procedures, and checking the shunts, checking the fluid levels, checking the edema, checking her growth, checking her brain development. We were also seeing cardiology, who was checking that pulmonary stenosis and anything else that was going on. And then we were also seeing the genetics department, and they were talking to us about like Noonan's, because they were still saying possibly it could be Noonan's, and just trying to get us prepared for that. I was still seeing my community midwife briefly as well, but you know, not too much, because obviously what you normally do with a community midwife I couldn't be planning my birth and all that, because everything was basically just taken out of my hands. And I'm just trying to think if there was anybody else that we were seeing before when I was pregnant with her. I think it was just the consultants who did the shunt procedures, the cardiologists, the genetic team, obviously my community midwife, and that was everybody whilst I was pregnant with her. And then after I had her, which I will talk about in another video, we saw everybody. We pretty much saw every single department near enough in the hospital. They were really good. They were really thorough. So yeah, that was really good. But I think, you know, I can obviously talk about the pregnancy now because Zara's standing right behind me playing and making a mess. But you know, I would have loved to have done this video at the time whilst I was going through it all, but I couldn't. I couldn't talk about her. I couldn't talk about everything. Obviously, there was still a great big part of me that just didn't know whether she was actually going to be here or not. I mean, like I said, you know, throughout the whole pregnancy, continuously we got told she still has a really high chance of not making it, even after she was born, everything. And it is so heartbreaking, it's horrible. And I mean, for her sister Sophia, for my older one, I felt absolutely awful because I never prepared her for having Zara. I never spoke about having another baby to her. Obviously she could see my tummy and she could see that I had a baby in my tummy, but we didn't do the whole, you know how you meant to do the whole chats of preparing, oh, you're going to be a big sister, you're going to have a little brother or a little sister, it's going to be fun, or like, you know, people get books on it. We never did anything like that because I just did not want to over prepare Sophia and then something terrible happened with Zara and she wasn't here. So, you know, I'm gonna get upset. Like I never spoke about the baby, like I never spoke about Zara to Sophia. She just basically said, do you have a baby in your tummy? And I was like, yeah, I do. And that would literally be it. I wouldn't like let her feel her kicking. I wouldn't think about names with her. I wouldn't talk about it because I genuinely didn't, well, from what everybody was telling me, I genuinely did not think that I'd be bringing her home. Sorry, I'm gonna get upset. And that brings me to, like, with regards to her kicking, you know, I found it really hard because I was desperately trying not to bond with her. I didn't want to bond with her because I didn't want to bond with the baby that I wasn't going to be bringing home and bringing up. Sorry, I'm sorry. And I remember when she kicked me and I was lying in bed and I was holding my tummy and she kicked me, and I just remember bursting into tears and just being like, oh, please don't kick me. Like, please don't try and bond with me, because what if you don't make it like everybody's saying? What if you're not here right now? Like, I can't deal with bonding with you and then I don't bring you home. Like, it was really, really, really hard. And, you know, this is why I'm doing these videos, because unless you have been in this situation, you don't know how hard it is. Like, you know, you can think about it, but you don't know how hard it is. And there isn't enough awareness. There isn't enough support for people, you know, to constantly get told your baby's not going to make it, your baby's not going to make it. It's not, you know, it's not nice, you know. And I know they have to make you aware. I know they're doctors, I know, because, you know, if they were telling you everything's okay and it isn't, that isn't okay either. But, you know, I think, like, once they've said it once or twice, that should, you know, they don't need to keep repeating themselves. Like, we get it, you know, isn't it, darling? Like, you know, we get it. And, you know, I just want to show people that, you know, with intervention, with like the shunt procedures, with things, with obviously very good doctors, but, you know, with the shunt procedures, with things, it doesn't always have to be a bad outcome. I know it is in a lot of cases, but I think it depends what actually is the cause of the hydrops, because I said it in my previous video. So hydrops, hydrops, I'm just going to call it because I can't pronounce that other word. Hydrops is not what is wrong with the baby. Hydrops is showing you that something else is wrong. So, you know, if you can figure out what else is, if the doctors can figure out, or you can figure out, because we'll get to that later, that the doctors weren't actually the ones that diagnosed Zara. If you can figure out what it is, you know, there is a chance, depending on what it is, that you can save your baby, you know, with the early intervention, with the shunt. And when I say early intervention, you know, I've seen some people ask about 8-10 weeks. I mean, that's super early. I mean, I didn't even find out about Zara's hydrops until she was 16 weeks, and we were still able to you know, to help her. So, you know, but it really all depends on what the cause of the hydrops is. And Zara's cause, which I will go through in another video because this one is actually getting really long now, is pulmonary lymphangiectasia. Now, if you Google that, you won't think your baby will survive. And I mean, we didn't even know it was that until she was about 2 months old. You know, so we didn't even have a cause of the Hydrops until she was about 2 months old. And again, when we were still being told that, you know, she's not going to make it because if she's got that, you know, you can't survive from that. Again, here she is, you know, here's Zara. You can. So, you know, I think there needs to be a lot more awareness. There needs to be a lot more understanding of it properly. Because I think sometimes doctors just think, oh, you've got that, that's it. And they don't, like, you know, want to help because they just think your baby's not going to make it anyway. And actually, that isn't true. It all depends on what the cause of the Hydrops are. And if it is something, even that's really dangerous and really rare, like what Zara's got, you know, your baby can still make it. You know, with the shunt procedures, with getting rid of the excess fluid, you know, with help, I mean, and believe me, in intensive care, she did need a lot of help, which I'll go through on my next video. But, you know, they can make it. And it is hard. It's hard. We're still going through things. She's 3 next month. She's still on oxygen 24 hours a day. Development-wise, she's a little bit behind. Feeding is a big struggle for us, and her being so vulnerable, like she's extremely vulnerable, which obviously impacts a lot on her development, socialization and everything. So it is a big, long journey. But, you know, what I've wanted to do is just, you know, help support people who are going through the same things, who have just been through the same things, or, you know, maybe have just been to the doctors and heard the word Hydrops and looking for what Hydrops is and what kind of outcomes are there. Now, on Facebook, there are some amazing support groups on Facebook. I know I, you know, looked on the internet myself and searched up and down and read loads of medical journals, but honestly, don't go on Facebook, search Hydrops, you know, support groups, parent support groups, and talk to people on there, because honestly, there's loads of people who have actually been through this, but it's just hard to find them and find the support. But there are loads of support on there from other people just like me, who want to help people, who want to share their story, who want to create awareness and give hope to people. You know, there is, and don't get me wrong, there's an awful lot of sad stories on there as well, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. But at least if you speak to people who have been through similar things, you know, you can be prepared either way with, you know, with what the outcome's going to be, you know. But fingers crossed, if we can create more awareness of this and support each other and just create more awareness, so, you know, the doctors more likely, you know, be more likely to offer these shunt procedures, and because, you know, it costs a lot of money to do them, you know, but if they will be more willing to offer these and offer support, then hopefully we can, you know, save more lives, save more babies. But on my next video will be talking about Zara in, like, having Zara, like, giving birth to Zara and the intensive care, which we was in from when she was born in November to the middle of February, and then we were in HDU, and then we were in a children's ward for quite a long time. She was in hospital for 8 months in total. So, like I said, it is a really long road, but, you know, you can get there in the end. And we wouldn't be where we are without the support of other people who have been through things like this. So that's why I'm doing this, to try and help other people, create a support network, create awareness, and also you guys can also reach out to me as well. I've talked to a lot of different mums who are going through the same things, who have asked, should they have the shunt procedures, shouldn't they, you know, their baby's got, you know, the fluid around their lungs, or the baby's on a ventilator, or their baby's gaining loads of fluid, and, you know, loads of things. I spoke to loads of different mums who are in the same situation, so, you know, please feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll try and help in any way I can, or can point you in the direction of the other support groups to speak to other people. All right, well, I'm gonna let you guys go because this has been a very long video, but you know, I wanted to try and talk to you guys about it in depth so that, you know, you understand what happens when you are pregnant with a baby with Hydrops, and how hard it is. And I mean, I can't even go through it, you know, I can't even portray how hard it really is when you're going through it. I mean, I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, you know, I couldn't relax. I would literally be at night, as soon as I'd put on a brave face for Sophia, and then as soon as Sophia was in bed, I'd be sat down here crying, shaking. I wouldn't want to sleep. I just wanted to find a solution for Zara, and I was in an awful state, like an awful state. You know, it was really, really, really hard. You know, I'm not trying to say that it isn't. It is blimmin' awful. It really, really is. And, you know, so I have been there, and I do understand. But yeah, if you've got any, you know, questions, or, you know, want to talk about anything, you know, let me know. And I'll obviously reply, you know, and we can have a chat about things. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.